All right, time for some frequently asked questions. Question number one, of course, is this dangerous? Well, the act of building something is not the safest hobby. No, you'll probably smash your thumb a few times, with like a hammer. No, no, I mean, like, is it dangerous to be in your building? I don't know. Probably. Like, but not that dangerous, to be honest. Well, what do you mean it's not dangerous? How is it not dangerous to be in something that you constructed and you have no carpentry experience? Well, because carpentry is a job that, like, we human beings kind of like made up, you know? There was a time before carpenters. And I'm not just talking about like ancient history. I'm talking about the fact that on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like 100% of people need shelter. I think if you like look at survivalists and castaways and stuff like that, I think that they actually recommend that you put together a structure as soon as humanly possible, before you do anything else. People think that food and water is important or something like that. No, the shelter is the most important. You'll die of exposure before you die of just about anything else. So 100% of all of our ancestors managed to put together a shelter, and they didn't just like stick like a lean-to up to like get busy for a couple minutes to make another human. No, they raised that human until it was able to take care of itself. Now back then, that meant raising a kid to like, I don't know, 5 or something before you put them to work, maybe even before that. But despite the large amount of time before child labor laws were invented here in human history, still that structure lasted at least that long. So with the average person buying into a mortgage and then moving less than 7 years later on a 30-year mortgage, that's the statistics. You can look them up. It's been a while since I looked them up, by the way, so they might be slightly inaccurate, but I'm probably in the ballpark here. But yeah, that's the current statistics. So with that being the average person's experience whenever it comes to a mortgage, that means it's probably pretty easy to make something that's going to stand for at least 7 years, before you have to rebuild it or something like that. Yeah, but isn't it dangerous? Like, you have to be able to be a carpenter or something like that, to build a building. Like, it doesn't matter what human history says. You still have to be some sort of expert or professional, right? There's no way that you can just build a thing. Well, if there's no way for you to build a thing, then how come all humans throughout all human history have managed to do it? Not all of our ancestors were carpenters or architects or anything like that. The reason that my pioneer ancestors managed to put together homes out of log cabins and stuff without really knowing how, it was a trial and error process. And they used trees because the United States was covered in forestry, so they had trees. They were already chopping them down to make fires and cook food and be warm and stuff like that. Why not just make a house out of that too? And then they made the fireplaces out of things that didn't burn, like mud. And then people from all the way around the rest of the world, they made homes out of mud, if that was all that they had. So adobe houses, stuff like that. Adobe is a combination of 3 different materials besides water. So it's clay-rich dirt, essentially. You'll see it like listed as clay a lot of the times, but it's clay-rich dirt. That's all it is. They're not going down to your local craft store and buying like potter's clay and then building a house out of that. That'd be really expensive, right? So it's clay-rich dirt straw or some other type of stringy vegetable matter. There's not like a big straw store that everybody on Earth has always been going to. You know, there was a time before Lowe's, believe it or not. There was even a time whenever Sears existed, believe it or not. You'll have to look in the like hieroglyphics for that, figure that one out. But yeah, so clay-rich dirt, straw or some type of stringy dead plant matter, vegetable matter, and sand. Combination of those three materials, that's actually a material called cob. Whenever you make it into the shape of a brick and then let it dry in the sun, that's whenever it becomes adobe. So yeah, you can make a house out of dirt, you can make a house out of whatever, dig a hole in the ground and put a tarp on top and live under it. We go out into the forest all the time and just put up a tent, and plenty of people make those tents out of just tarps. Plenty of survivalists, plenty of military folk just make an entire tent out of like tarps or something, or a tarp even. So yeah, you might think that this is incredibly dangerous and it's incredibly stupid and everything, but whenever you look at it, you know, scientifically, there's actually a humongous chance that you're going to succeed. There's a way higher chance that you're going to succeed, significantly orders of magnitude higher, that you're going to succeed at this construction project. Now, if you want something that, you know, my cabin that I'm building is 200 square feet. Whenever it comes to something that's much larger than that, like a 3-story home or something like that, you might want to contact somebody else. But for inspiration, you can go to a great many different places. I've been studying this for 12 years now, give or take. My degree is in sustainability. That's my bachelor's degree, and it was just a chance. You know, I had an elective class that I took that was a sociology class. They told me about Dancing Rabbit Eco Village in Rutledge, Missouri, and so I went down and I took a look at it. And 100% of them, you know, built their own homes. Not all of them were carpenters or architects or engineers or anything like that, or plumbers or electricians, but they managed to build their homes. They managed to get all of these things. You can go down to Dancing Rabbit Eco Village. They have a website, and plus it's in Rutledge, Missouri. You can drive down there, take a look. There's plenty of videos about it, so just head down there, you know, take a gander. And they've been going for about 30 years. 30 years. None of them have died because one of their structures fell on their heads. You know, and some of them have some pretty sizable structures. So that's what's particularly impressive about it. So as for the rest of us who just want to make like a tiny house or something like that, yeah, it's incredibly easy. The entire American stick framing institution was made so that 2 people could build a house. It was actually made, streamlined, thought through very intensely. So stick framing is, you know, essentially, and this is dumbed down quite a bit, really generalized, but stick framing is the process of taking, you know, 2x4s, so something that measures roughly 2 inches by 4 inches by 8 inches, or 2 inches by 4 inches by 8 feet, and then putting about, you know, 6 of those vertically and putting 2 horizontally on the top and bottom, nailing those together, and that's your basic building block for an American house, is a bunch of those. Literally, you know, 6 2x4s from Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever you want to buy them. And then one on top, one on bottom. Nail them together, screw them together, whatever you want to do. They prefer nails because screws don't bend. And the housing industry, they prefer nails because screws don't bend and still hold together. You can really, take a whack at some furniture that's been nailed together, and see how long that nail holds together and holds the whole thing together. The nail usually won't split. Usually you can recover the nails out of a piece of furniture that you've bashed to bits, and then unbend the nail and reuse the nail. That's how strong the nail is. But for screws will, the top will snap off. It'll strip down completely and be unusable. There's a ton of different things that can go on with screws, but yeah, so the old hammer and nail, that's your standard thing in the industry. Of course, whenever it comes to mass construction and the like, they'll use a nail gun, but you get the point. And really, hammer and nails, that's all you really need. Most people will need to pre-drill holes because there's actually a lot of nails that are coming out now that aren't super good, but they'll still do the nail thing. They'll be reusable and everything. If you can find some free pallets somewhere, you just go on Craigslist.com and look at the free section. There's plenty of people giving out pallets. Then even the pallet nails, which are made of the most terrible material most of the time, even the pallet nails are completely reusable. And I have jars and jars and jars of nails around here that I've recovered from pallets. But yeah, so hammer, nail, and 2x4s, that's all you need. You can do the exact same thing. You don't have to go down to Home Depot and buy your standard 2x4x8 thing and build your standard American home. You can chop things down and everything and nail that together, which you saw with my cabin. You can nail things together like that if you want, but it becomes a little bit more difficult because something that's 2x4x8, 2x4 inches by 8 feet long, that's one thing. By the way, that's not the specifications anymore. That used to be the specifications. Now they're like 1 5/8 inches at the thinnest, and then like, I don't know, it's something stupid. But they shaved off as much material as possible while maintaining as much strength as possible to save money, right? So, but to get a nail all the way through even the skinniest sticks, if you're going to make something that's, if you're going to take something that's 8 feet long and relatively straight, then it's going to need to be relatively thick as well to maintain its strength. So whenever you're nailing through something like that, it's going to be a hell of a deal. It's going to be a hell of an ordeal. And the longer nails are more expensive. And plus, longer drill bits. You'll go through drill bits very often if you're doing all of this. Now, I started, whenever I was pinning the logs to other things, I started by drilling massive holes and then putting an actual stick in there. It had to be a sizable hole to put a sizable stick, and I had to buy increasingly powerful drills, the type that were corded, because that was the only way to get the amount of power that I needed out of it. I did that at the start, and eventually I said to hell with all that and found another way. There's a couple of like old grates and sort of like kind of like grocery cart style baskets around here. I don't know why, but there was. And so they're made of very thin metal, metal tubes, but that were solid metal. They weren't hollow in the middle. And so I would use an angle grinder to cut off these metal tubes from these like grates that I found around here, and then that way it would have the strength of steel. I would use that instead of a stick to pin logs, so it would have the strength of metal, but it would be very thin, and so I wouldn't have to burn out so many drills and spend so much money on drills and spend so much time drilling and spend so much money on drill bits and the like. I could drill a relatively small hole through a log to pin it to something else, and then I would just drop one of these, metal bits in there. And that's how I started doing all of this with the logs and whatnot. And then I would bend both sides to make sure that it didn't move, which was a hell of a lot better than what I could do with the sticks, right? Because the sticks, all I could do was either put them in there or hammer them in there. Those were my only two choices. And so with bending the metal rods that I was inserting through these things to sort of tie them together, that was a really effective strategy. Now, your average home, whenever you're doing stuff like this, you'll cover it in plywood or you'll cover it in OSB, oriented strand board, and that's your standard thing that you'll do to a home, and that makes it easy to install vinyl siding or shingles or whatever you want, and that makes the process a hell of a lot easier. You'll never be hunting around for a stud or something like that. And on the inside, of course, you'll use drywall the vast majority of the time. But, drywall, it might be cheap relatively, but it's expensive overall. So stuff like this. So, if you're in an area with no building codes, then, you can pick up a hobby. My recommendation at all points in time, obviously, this is a sort of failed experiment. In time, this will fall apart. I'm sure of it. Even after I've got one sort of fence post that I made out of two 2x4s, and screwing them together. But I've got one fence post, and it is outside the structure to push on the structure to prevent the walls from further damage. And so I've got one fence post, and I can start putting them on the inside as well to take some of the weight of the ceiling if I want to, and I probably will eventually. But the ones on the outside are properly installed. They've got concrete footings. I dig the hole as deep as it says to dig them on the bag of concrete. So it's right and it's proper, and I buy the 2x4s and everything because obviously this is a failed experiment, as I've said. The real thing, you can, as you can see, it was relatively easy to just build the thing, and if you build the thing and then you get into the thing, and then even if you stay overnight in the thing and it quote unquote works, even if all of those things are done in that order and everything seems like it's good to go, that does not necessarily mean that it's a structure that's going to last for a while. So, I referenced a My Modern Self-Reliance video on YouTube about a $25 cabin that was made out of sticks and pallet wrap. So plastic wrap, saran wrap, whatever you want to call it. And saran wrap is a little bit thinner you know, on a it's a long thing, right? It's like 25 feet or something like that. You'll buy at a time from the store, so it's a little thinner, width wise, but and pallet wrap is a little thicker, but it's the same general thing. I think Saran wrap is generally more food safe, but that's besides the point. So that's what he made, and he he went in there, and I want you to take a measurement. He tells you how cold it is outside in the video, and then he gets in there with a tent a tent stove and everything, starts a fire, and then while the fire is going on, while that fire is going on, he'll tell you the new temperature while there's an active fire in this tiny little thing that he can't even stand up in. And I want you to pay attention to the differences between those two temperatures. Hell, I thought that I thought that whenever it came to igloos, you know, igloos like they make in apparently very far northern regions on occasion, igloos. I thought that you could have like room temperature in igloos, and no, of course not, because the place starts to melt. And they claim that if you if it's just like above, you know, absolute zero on the Celsius scale, or 32 Fahrenheit, if it's just above that, then the inside snow will melt, but it will refreeze just as fast as melting, creating like a barrier or something. But it's still an ice cube, man. This thing, it melts. It melts. Of course it melts. And I thought that you could like live in an igloo like you could like a house, and that's how stupid I am at, you know, my age. But I've done a ridiculous amount of research. I hemmed and hawed over this construction. I planned it out for ages and ages before I ever picked up a hammer or a nail. And this thing didn't go the way that I wanted it to, but that's home construction. It never does. So I always recommend to people that if they want to start playing around with stuff like this, I always recommend Adobe. So that's how I always recommend that you start. It's also how John Jandai recommends that you start. John Jandai, Life is Easy. You'll find him on YouTube. He has a couple of TED Talks as well, but he will tell you how to make a house out of mud bricks. So literally, heading down to your local park, and then, you know, taking a little gardening spade, and then just digging in the dirt, and then making little, you know, dirt blocks, and then drying them in the sun, or just taking them home. I'm sure you can take a couple of blocks of dirt home. You know, if there's an authority figure nearby, ask them. Hey, do you mind if I take a couple of blocks of dirt? I want to see if these things hold up, right? And then I'll tell you yes or no. If they tell you no, go to a different park, right? So, dirt. You can also find free dirt on Craigslist if you really want to own some free dirt. So, making those mud bricks, like I said, they're a combination of clay-rich dirt. You know, if there's a cactus growing in the desert, it's not growing out of sand, it's growing out of dirt. And so the dirt underneath the cactus is not going to be clay-rich dirt, right? It's going to be sand-rich dirt. So that's probably not going to be good to use. But most of the rest of us on Earth here are standing on pretty much clay-rich dirt. So it's probably not going to be super difficult to find. I thought that creek sand was like a rarity. I was like, it has to be, right? Because I've bought like a bag of sand from Home Depot before, so it has to be a rarity. And then I go down to the nearest creek, and it's like a little beach. It's like this tiny little beach, and I was like, wow. I dug up like a bunch of sand. I just took a shovel and a bucket, and I filled up the bucket in like 2 seconds. I whipped out a stopwatch. I timed myself doing it, and I was like, oh my god, you can make $35 an hour if all you're doing is shoveling sand, and if you can find a buyer, right? I was like, wow, this is crazy. You ever see people buy dirt? People buy dirt. Plenty of people giving away dirt. Plenty of people buying dirt. Plenty of people buying firewood. Plenty of people giving it away. Bottled water. This is a story as old as time. Like, it's really strange what people will buy. People will sit there. People will go into a. You ever seen a store that's like on the beach? You never see someone selling seashells far away from a beach. You ever notice that? You think it's like a supply thing, but the fact of the matter is people are wanting souvenirs, and they're refusing to get out there on the beach and find their own. And they just go into the shop and they'll buy a souvenir because the shop owner went and found it by themselves. Isn't that weird? It's very strange. It's very strange. Most hay is just grass. People are mowing lawns, and the hay is that you buy is usually like 100% this type of grass or that. So it's like 100% alfalfa, but it is just grass. So people are mowing the lawns and then just letting the grass sit there, or they're blowing them out into the street or whatever the hell you do with the thatch or whatever, the grass. And people pay money for that. We live in a weird world. It's way weirder for the rest of the world to be operating the way it is than for me to be out here with a hammer and nail and some wood, pallets. That's actually much more average in terms of human history. The rest of y'all are the weird ones. Take a step back, look at our world. It's a weird place to be. But yeah, I always recommend that people, whenever they're going to start fiddling around with this kind of stuff, to take the Adobe approach. The best advice, there's a particular guy on YouTube that does nothing. He's got thousands of videos on Cobb. If not thousands, then hundreds. If not hundreds, then dozens at least. Dozens of videos on Cobb, COBB. That's the base material that you make whenever you combine clay-rich dirt, dead stringy plant matter, and a little bit of sand. And with that combination, that's called Cobb. You make it into a brick, and then you dry it in the sun. Now it's Adobe. And he gave a great piece of advice. Everybody wants to know, oh my God, I have to do a jar test, so I have to mix dirt with water and then look at a clear jar and let it all settle out to take the exact percentage of the amount of clay that's in my dirt, my local dirt in my lawn, or whatever I can get my hands on. So I need to know the exact percentages so I can make the perfect mix, so I can have the perfect Adobe structure or whatever. And he gave a great piece of advice. Even if you do that, and out here in the lawn where I'm staying, I've found places in the lawn that are sandier spots, and places in the lawn that are more clay-rich spots, and places in the lawn that have nothing but rocks underneath it for ages and ages going down. Just rocks and rocks and rocks and roots and everything else. So each shovelful of dirt might be different. This whole thing of wanting to get precise measurements is a fool's errand. So this guy that I'm talking about on YouTube, he says you have to go out there and get it by feel. You are never going to be able to follow a recipe and use it in the real world. Even master bakers will give you the same general advice. Depending on the humidity and stuff of your local environment, you might need to use more or less flour and the like. So he says you got to get out there and you've got to take your dirt, your clay-rich dirt, So put a shovel in the ground, and that first shovel full of stuff will be like, grass and whatever the hell is on the top of your lawn. The second shovelful after that, underneath that, that's usually going to be your clay rich dirt. So as long as you can get the damn rocks and stuff out of it, if there's any rocks on there, then it'll be your clay rich dirt. And he says, you take your clay rich dirt, you take your stringy vegetable matter, and then you take some water, small amounts at a time, keep mushing it together, and then once you lift up like a ball of it and it's kind of holding its own shape, that's whenever you know you've got a good mix. And from there, you really sprinkle the sand on a little bit, and that's you really have to see it by feel. Once it makes a good ball and it's holding its shape and it's kind of sticking to your hand like a little bit, but not too overly much, so you can like churn your hand over and it's not going to fall down onto the ground or table or whatever the hell you're doing all this in front of, you've got a good mix, and it's time to stick it in the mold. So and that mold can be as simple as, I always tell people to use Walmart has 3 aluminum mini loaf pans for, it used to be $1, but now it's like $1.24 or something, hooray inflation. But yeah, just use that. Make a little loaf brick, instead of like trying to make your own mold and stuff like that. Take all the guesswork out of it and start playing with bricks. Treat them like Legos. The stuff in between the bricks, it's just more of that mud mixture. It's more cob. That's all it is. It's a dry cob held together with more cob, and that's how you make a building around the world. Up above a certain meridian, the groundwater will seep up from the ground. So each and every time it rains, it'll seep up from the ground. So in non-arid regions, you can't really build from the ground up, because it'll seep up the thing. And since your cob adobe brick has been dried in the sun, if the groundwater seeps up the wall like that into the material, it turns back into mud, and mud, as you might have noticed, isn't very good at holding its own weight, right? So your building will fall down. So above a certain meridian, it's not really going to be a thing that you're going to be able to do from the ground up and expect it to remain there. Yes, I get it. You can put oil on the outside of your bricks, and I'm very proud of you if you do that, because that's going to keep most of the rain out. Things don't stay oily forever. Eventually the oil will wash off, even whenever the rain doesn't have any soap in it. So and also it seeps up from the ground. So if you put the brick down and you haven't soaked the entire brick in oil or something, then it's still going to happen. So above a certain meridian, what we do is we make the first 3 or 4 feet of our house out of stone, and then the rest can be cob or adobe. And that's what you have to do around here, where I was born and raised. I was born and raised in Illinois, so that's what you have to do around here, is make the first 3 or 4 feet of your building, it has to be stone. But there's a trick to that, because Primitive Technology on YouTube, they make bricks. If you make real bricks, it's a pain in the butt. You can look at the Townsend's YouTube channel. It's a pain in the butt to make real bricks. So instead of making real bricks, Primitive Technology gets you about halfway there. And you can even, in a lot of his videos where he makes a brick, he'll do a soak test. So he'll just throw it in a bucket of water for, a day or two. And then he'll come back to it and, it's still a brick. So he'll show you how to get it halfway there, and that's good enough. And literally, it'll stand the test of time. Most bricks throughout human history weren't, like quote unquote real bricks. Most bricks throughout human history, if they were fired generally the way that primitive technology does on YouTube. John Plant, that's the name of that creator. So he'll show you how to do that. So you'll get a brick that lasts, but the adobe in between the bricks, that's still regular adobe, right? So for the first 3 or 4 feet of a structure that you want to build for your family or something like that, that first 3 or 4 feet of structure, that's that's something you're probably going to have to go and grab some cement, right? If you see anything else on YouTube, if you see 2 men that are probably from East Asia and they're building an entire home with just sticks, it's not real. It's fairly easy to tell what's real and what's not on YouTube, but the biggest and easiest test is to just go out there and build, right? That's why the St. Louis Science Center, I live very close to St. Louis, Missouri. That's why the St. Louis Science Center has that arch display, right? Just go out there and build. So that's the easiest way to tell the difference. So they'll say like, oh, I can dig out natural cement from a pond or something like that. That's not real. So you'll probably have to buy cement just for the mortar in between your fired mud bricks for the first 3 or 4 feet of wall on a house, but it's no problem at all. The big difference, you can see that the structure is complete as far as anybody is concerned. I could walk in there, make a YouTube video, and then stay overnight and then leave, and you'll leave thinking that, oh wow, this guy with this bachelor's degree, this moron, knows how to build a house. I'll build a house just like him. Fact of the matter is, if it doesn't have any insulation, you're going to be spending the majority of your time running out there, grabbing more wood for the fire, stuff like that. It's going to be a big pain in the butt. You're going to pay for that insulation one way or the other. Insulation pays for itself in a short amount of time, but modern day insulation is incredibly expensive. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't have to be this big deal. If you parge a structure, it's very difficult, and parging is kind of like, it's kind of, you smear a bunch of cement on the outside of a structure, and as you can tell, cement doesn't burn, and so if you smear mud on the outside of your structure in the same way, with the same level of thickness, it's not going to burn either. And so if you smear mud on the inside of your structure, you know how drywall mud is called mud? That's because it started out as mud, and then eventually it became drywall mud, something that you can buy, but you can just use mud, right? So, smearing mud on the inside of your structure, that kind of fireproofs it. It's not 100%, but what is, right? And so that helps out quite a bit. Like I said, you have a much higher success rate than you probably think that you'd have whenever it comes to making a structure that's not going to fall on your head and kill your entire family. The people in the industry, they like to scare the hell out of you, but it's really like, we've got all of human history telling us one thing, and we've got a couple of people with a couple commercials just recently telling us another. It's really difficult to ignore the commercial people because they're big, they're flashy, they're very loud, and they're on all the time. But the history book is there. You can go ahead and take a look at it, right? So all of human history versus the person on the infomercial. But yeah, that's what I recommend for people is start playing with mud bricks, and you can make a home as long as you can. Around here, as long as you fire the first 3 or 4 feet of mud bricks, that's one thing. To insulate the home, I'm shredding up styrofoam, but people who make straw bale houses, like I said, straw bale, that's one thing, but you can use hay, and hay is cut grass. So if you can make a hay bale, which one person makes a hay bale with a garbage can. He just takes some strings, lays it down gently on the bottom of a garbage can, and he stuffs a bunch of cut grass into the garbage can over and over and over again, and then he stands on inside the garbage can on the grass, and he pulls those strings real tight, and then he ties them, and that's his 2-string bale, and he does that over and over again. That, again, whip out your timer. That guy makes $35 an hour if he can find a buyer. It's crazy, right? So you can use hay, and people don't normally use hay for construction because hay is normally more expensive because people feed it to livestock. It's a sort of active material or whatever. But you can use hay. So you can, and straw bale buildings are very well insulated, and hay has similar insulative properties. So you can, build a straw bale building. And John Jandai, Life is Easy, he tells you how to build a straw bale building as well on his YouTube channel. And so he'll build the whole thing. It's a workshop. There's a bunch of people from all over the world that did it with him. So you can do that. But I really like Matt Reisinger's double wall theory, and he got that theory from someone else that he cites pretty often. So that first wall of mud bricks, that'll be your first wall, and then you can just stuff as much insulative material as you want, and then build a second wall, and then that's that, and that works perfectly, right? It's a beautiful little thing. It can be like that. A lot of people get really creative. They want to build a square building with bricks, but plenty of people will show you how to make a dome instead, and that way you can make the whole thing out of bricks instead of switching to a different material, start spending a bunch of money on a building material, stuff like that. There's plenty of people that will just make a dome, and I know it's a boob that's sticking out of the ground. Wah. People, they identify with their homes. They think that they are their homes. My God, what would people think of me if I lived in a home? They would think that you're mortgage free. People sacrifice most of their lives, dedicating themselves to trying to impress. It's the old Fight Club quote, right? We work jobs that we hate to impress people that we don't like. There's a 3 parts to that quote, and I can never remember it. So we work jobs that we hate to impress people that we don't like. To live lives that disappoint us or something like that. I don't know. But the people that we're trying to impress, they're not actually impressed. The people that the jobs that we hate, they don't. It doesn't pay out. It doesn't give you enough money to make it worth it. And I don't know. I don't remember. Watch Fight Club, and then you can get the full quote. But it's pretty accurate. We get really wrapped up on whether or not we're impressing other human beings, and the fact of the matter is that we're working our fingers to the bone. We're working overtime, we're working 2 jobs and 3 jobs, and we're running away from our own thoughts and everything and trying to hide from our own emotions, and we're doing all of this, and it's very unhealthy, and we're working until we break like a like a hammer, like a tool. We're working until we break. And then we finally have to go to the doctor. And then they try to put us back together so we can work our fingers to the bone again. And again, the people that we're trying to impress, we don't even like them. And they aren't impressed. And the thing isn't buying what we think that we want it to buy. I can still remember my old coworker from Oklahoma saying that, justifying his $500 a month that he paid for his car, and that was like in 2010 money. He was paying $500 a month for this 350Z something or the other that he had a custom tribal tattoo painted on the sides of it. It was ridiculous. And it was a 2-seater. He had to be pulled out of the ditch all the time. It was unreliable whether or not he could make it to work on time because he couldn't handle the Oklahoma weather. He would spin out. He would end up in a ditch. It was a very unreliable vehicle. It was incredibly expensive, but he was like, dude, it's a chick magnet. And I pointed out to him that he didn't get the car until after he got his girlfriend, which I think eventually became his fiance and everything. So it's not even buying you what you think it's going to buy you. And if somebody loves you for your car or your money or what you have in the bank or whatever, or because you can do backflips, whatever the hell the thing that you think, oh, somebody's going to love me because I know how to play guitar or something. Like, if they love you for that, then once that goes away, so will they. Everybody wants somebody to love them for who they are. So let's stop, taking all these individual little things here and there and distracting from who we are, and instead be ourselves. Be open for criticism, and that will weed out the people that don't love us in the first place, and that'll be a much faster thing. It'll be a much more healthy thing. I think I just streamlined the vast majority of therapy, which I've had a lot of. So I've streamlined a lot of therapy there, just by giving those few tips there at the end. Either way, that's the thing. So just get something that works. I always say, like, you can build a home. If you can build a home, then you can live in the home. If you can live in the home, then you can take the money that you're saving by living in that home to dig a well. You dig a well, you use the money that you save by having your own home and living in that home that you've built, and the money that you're saving from having no water bill to buy solar panels. You can use the money that you save from that from not having an electric bill anymore. You can use the money that you save from that to pay off your car, and then you can use the money that you save on that to buy an electric car, and then now you don't have to pay for gas anymore. And soon enough, you have no bills aside from the mandatory ones here in American society, which is property taxes, which is obviously going to be cheaper than your mortgage or your rent, because it's usually included in your mortgage and your rent. And it can be insanely cheap. The property taxes in certain places are less than $16 a year. I've seen that's the base level for property taxes around where I live. Almost nobody gets that, but that's where it starts. $16 a year. Does it sound affordable? And then, car insurance. And I've seen car insurance for as low as $1 a day. Liability only, of course. Minimum coverage. But that's so it's relatively affordable, right? And so with that being your only two bills, that can give you the time that you can go back to school and stuff like that. And then this time, instead of going to school to get a a job that pays more money or something like that. Instead, you can go to school because you want to, because you want to learn about the things that you want to learn about, because you want to become a teacher and teach about the things that you want to learn about, because you want to be a professor and teach what you're truly passionate about, what you can talk about all day long, what people are sick of you talking about. That's the real benefit. That's what you can actually do. And then you can spend all day being paid to ramble on about the things that you're truly passionate about. And if you want to skip that whole college scene, you can become a YouTuber, because you'll have low enough bills that you can just work part-time like every now and then, or I don't know, mow your lawn and then sell your grass. Or whatever you want, It makes it a hell of a lot easier to do just about everything. One final note: how to find land with no building codes. I thought that was particularly difficult for a long time until I realized that my family lives in an area without building codes. It's a tough thing. You got to call the courthouse. Wherever you plan on living, you got to call the courthouse first. It's fairly easy to look up whether or not a state has building codes for the whole state. That's actually very rare, but you look up a county, you call the county courthouse, you ask them, do you have building codes? And they'll point you in the direction of their building codes if they do. They'll say no if they don't. And that's step one, because towns have their own individual city building codes. Cities have their own individual building codes. And so now you have to look for land that's outside of those city or town borders. That's what happened. My family lives in a town. It's just that they live outside of town limits. They're not subject to the building codes of the town. So now you just look for land. And then also, if you call a county courthouse and you ask for land that is owned by the government, that's the smallest amount of money that you can pay, right? You have to pay taxes or whatever. You have to pay some sort of fee to transfer ownership. Whenever there's no salesman trying to sell you the property, it's just the government, then it's usually a tax land sale. And so they'll point you in the direction of whatever that is. For my state that I was born and raised in, Illinois, it's iltaxsale.com. iltaxsale.com. So the government has farmed it out to a civilian contractor, but you give them like $10-20, they'll give you a catalog. So they've gone through the difficulty of going to the different pieces of land for sale and taking pictures of them, or just telling you generally where it is. They don't put a lot of effort into it, but they put a little bit of effort into it. And then you can pick out something, check on Google Maps if it's outside of the local town limits. And then you can pay as low as $1,000 per parcel. Less than $1,000 per parcel. So for less than $1,000, you can own your own land. And as long as there's no building codes there, you can build whatever the hell you want and live in it. So it's that easy. How big is a parcel? A parcel could be a couple square feet, could be a couple of acres. It's just how they divide the land. So, the price doesn't change based on the size. The price changes based on what you'll pay. You go to the auction, somebody outbids you, that's that. I like to look for stuff that nobody's bidding for, because dirt is dirt. If you build a house out of dirt, dirt is dirt. There's nothing special about Californian dirt that justifies the amount of money that they pay to live there. It's still like clay and mud, loamy sand and sandy loam, It's the same composition. It's not magic dirt. You just gotta, it's whatever. So dirt is dirt. So I try to find things that people aren't bidding. That way I don't get in a bidding war, and then I can pay the bottom price. But it's going to be all out of pocket. So around here, less than $1,000, that'll get you some land, and then you can build on it. As long as you've done your due diligence with the building codes and whatnot. You might need to hire a surveyor, and that'll cost you like $500 or something, depending on the size of the land. And that's a pain in the butt. But besides that, everything else is fine. Land in Arizona apparently goes for like less than $20 per parcel. So just keep that in mind. Of course, there are cheaper states, and also there's free land. Well over 20 states are giving away free land. I can remember whenever I was looking into it in 2012, Venice, Illinois was giving away free land at the time, but it was in Madison County, which has its own building codes. It was in the city of Venice, inside their borders, and they have their own building codes. And of course, the only way that they would give you the land is by building a house to code. So just compare the price of a $1,000 or less parcel of land. That's all the money that you're spending. And then you build a house out of dirt, which is free. So the total cost is less than $1,000. Now, let's go to Madison County, where almost every place that I've looked requires any structure to be built on a concrete pad that's a minimum of 4 inches thick, and it's a minimum of like 2,000 square feet in size, something ridiculous like that. I can't remember, but plug that into a concrete calculator. Just type in concrete calculator on YouTube, and then you'll get something it's $2,000. That's what it was. It's $2,000 worth of concrete minimum. So now your free land cost you $2,000, and you have not begun construction. You have not even made the concrete pad yet. You have yet to even start doing that. What a pain in the butt, right? So, a land without building codes worth its weight in gold. I can't emphasize that enough. Either way, so do your due diligence and whatnot. Whenever it's free land, let's see how much it's going to cost. There's no free lunch, etc. But, it is the way it is. Anyways, that's your frequently asked questions and everything. Good luck out there. I'm trying to do the same thing. I've got the building part. Somebody's letting me build a thing on their land. And so it's their land, so it's their thing, right? You build a house on somebody else's land, and then they don't give you the land. Hey, that's their land and their house. Thanks for the house. So I'm trying to buy land and everything, but I'm a student, so it's hard to save up $1,000. Either way, I'm still trying to do it, and still looking around, doing things, trying to do my due diligence. I'm doing it. I'm trying with you. We can grow together. We can both do this thing, but I'm not the expert on it. So look around. There's plenty of people that have done precisely this. But whatever. And good luck out there. Not too many people actually pay off a 30-year mortgage, but it's ridiculous to pay for anything for 30 years. Especially whenever the average person leaves after 7 years. Why not just build a thing and then live in it? And then if you need a bigger thing, build a bigger thing. Build 2 things. Whatever. And of course, the tiny house movement was made to work around building codes. But beware, some building codes are stricter than you think. Just because you can build an accessory structure for less than, as long as it's less than 100 square feet as measured from the outside, just because that's true does not necessarily mean that you can live in that accessory structure. I nearly found that out the hard way. So, like I said, do your due diligence. It's a lot of research before you go ahead and you just grab land. you know, add to cart like it's on Amazon and then just like check out or something. Do your due diligence, do your research, and good luck out there. It's it's taken me 2 years to build this cabin over here, but that's a hell of a lot less time, and I did it by myself, and that's a hell of a lot less time than 30 years to pay off a mortgage. Also, of course, the corrugated tin sheets. Where did I get those? My oldest aunt used to live here, and there's been mobile homes on this property, and so eventually, one of the older mobile homes, it didn't last very long, so my family kind of just put baby in a corner and bulldozed it off to one side, and so my uncle pulled a lot of this tin sheeting off of it, so I just used it. So it was scrap, it was free, but if you buy it, of course, it's quite expensive. Anyways, like I said, good luck out there, and do whatever the hell you want, and go play in the mud. It's more fun. It's good for your skin or whatever.